How were they plowing their fields in Jamestown and Plymouth? What were they using? What kind of tool were they using? Just a stick plow, right? They hadn't even invented that nice plow that gave you these nice beautiful furrows. It was just a stick plow. About the same way that mankind had been plowing their fields for about 5,000 years. Right? Now they had improved upon it a little bit. They put a little metal tip on the end so it wouldn't wear down quite as fast. But basically the same way that mankind had been plowing their fields for about 5,000 years. Now what were they using as transportation? How were they getting around?
Animals.
Animal power, walking, wind power with their ships. In fact, their ships at this time weren't even as large and sophisticated as some of the ancient Phoenician ships. But they were still using the same type of power, right? Now, their medicines were made up more of noxious concoctions and superstitions than any kind of science. About the same way that mankind had been living for about 5,000 years. They thought that alcohol was a staple food. Some still think that. So, about the same way that mankind had been living for 5,000 years. You see this pattern here, right? Now, what happened? As soon as we wrote that Constitution and we put it in place, what took place? In less than 200 years, we went from ox cart to space travel. Amazing, the advancement that took place. It was an absolute miracle, in fact. We went further in 200 years than mankind had gone the 5,000 years previous. In fact, we might even say that we made a 5,000-year leap, right? And there's the title to a book that many of you perhaps are familiar with, The 5,000-Year Leap. Now, The 5,000-Year Leap, that's the title. Dr. Cleon Skousen wrote the book, and the title is to express exactly that point, that when you unleash the mind of man, when you institute principles of freedom and liberty, then mankind can go further in 200 years than they went in the 5,000 years previous. Really an amazing thing. And so 5,000-Year Leap basically goes through all those principles. Whenever anybody asks, I want to learn a little bit more about our government and our history and things, where should I start? This is it. This is the primer. Now, this doesn't talk about the Constitution at all. In fact, you won't get any constitutional education here other than the fact that you get the foundation upon which the Constitution was written. And so that's why this is the starting place, because once you learn these principles, then you can actually go through the Constitution rather quickly. In fact, you'll discover that about our course today. This is a course about the Constitution, but yet a large part of it is about history and principles. Because once you know the history, where the founders got their good ideas, and once you know the principles that they discovered, the Constitution is actually rather easy to go through and understand. And so we actually spend more time on the history and principles than the actual document itself. But we will go through it and get through most of the Constitution. But the 5,000-Year Leap, fantastic book. It's the one that really is the starting point to give you that foundation of these principles that the founders discovered.